Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are diving into a really wild thought experiment. We're going to unpack what actually happens when humanity finally solves its absolute oldest biological problem, death. We're exploring a scenario we call the architecture of forever, and we'll be mapping out the intense structural ripple effects of biological immortality. It's a completely different world, and trust me, the changes go way, way beyond just living longer.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to picture a guy named Julian. If you were sitting across a desk from him, you'd see a sharp-jawed, super energetic 35-year-old. But his birth certificate tells a totally different story. He was born in 2012, so his true chronological age? 264.
So how is he centuries old but looks like he's in his prime? Well, back in 2045, humanity achieved its ultimate triumph, the Eterna Protocol. It was this massive breakthrough that brought biological aging to a dead halt. And it wasn't magic, it was just hyper-precise cellular engineering. Basically 3 steps. First, transient reprogramming using Yamanaka factors to reset a cell's age back to 25 without causing tumors. Second, targeted senolytic therapies to go in and just purge toxic zombie cells from the body. And third, real-time CRISPR DNA repair. The human body just stopped dismantling itself.
Part 1. The Stagnant Ladder, the New Economy.
Now, curing death wasn't just a medical victory. It instantly destroyed the existing social contract. Think about how things used to work. The economy completely relied on a natural cycle, right? You get your education, you work, and eventually you retire, making room for the younger generation. But when aging stopped, pensions went bankrupt almost overnight. You literally cannot fund a permanent state of leisure for someone who's going to live another 500 years. So society had to adapt to what became known as the sabbatical cycle. Citizens work for 40 years, save up aggressively, and then take a 10-year sabbatical to retrain for a totally new career. That old rung of retirement, it's just entirely missing from the ladder.
And that missing rung created a massive structural bottleneck. It birthed a brand new social class, the Jerry oligarchy. Imagine being Julian's junior associate, Siddharth. Siddharth is 78 years old. He holds 3 master's degrees and has 70 years of practical experience. Yet he is permanently stuck as a junior associate. Why? Because the senior executives above him are perfectly healthy, hyper-experienced, and they are never stepping down. Upward mobility is just totally stalled out, because young people absolutely cannot compete with executives holding 2 centuries of compound interest.
Now, what's really interesting here is how the government tried to fix this stagnant ladder. They desperately stepped in with these drastic interventions. They passed the Capital Velocity and Wealth Ceiling Act, which slapped a brutal 100% tax on excess wealth. Then came the 10-year Limitation Act, forcing executives to mandatory step-downs after 25 years. But let's be real, the elite just found loopholes. They step down, sure, but then they just consult for their own firms through shell companies. They basically keep their grip on power indefinitely.
Part 2. The Cradle and the Gate, Criminalizing New Life. If the economy was a slow poison, the demographic shift was an immediate existential crisis. Think about it. If nobody dies, what happens when people just keep reproducing? The math gets scary fast. To prevent exponential population growth from just rapidly stripping the entire planet of resources, the United Nations passed the Global Demographic Stabilization Treaty. They capped the global human population at exactly 9 billion, no exceptions. To keep that super delicate equilibrium, society operates on a fierce one-in, one-out policy. Literally, someone has to die for someone to be born.
The emotional toll of this is just staggering. 92 years. To put that into perspective, that is the current waitlist time for a birth permit for our junior associate Siddharth and his partner Clara. Almost a century just for the right to have a kid. And if a couple gets desperate and tries to bypass the system, the laws are brutal. An unauthorized pregnancy means the child is legally barred from the Eterna Protocol, so they will age and die naturally, while the parents face strict, mandatory biological sterilization. And the wait lists just keep extending, because the annual mortality rate has absolutely plummeted to an incredibly low 0.04%. People simply aren't leaving. The result is a beautifully preserved world that's kind of like a museum. It's completely absent of children's laughter, and it's just meticulously maintained by these permanent curators who have lived there forever.
Part 3. The Psychology of Forever, the Evolution of Love and Risk.
How does an infinite timeline completely rewire the human brain? Well, in the old world, marriage was built on the premise of till death do us part, right? A commitment bounded by natural mortality. But in an ageless society, spending 1,000 years with one person is psychologically exhausting. So relationships inevitably shifted to term covenants. Take Julian and his wife Naomi.
After 150 years and 3 50-year covenants, they literally know the punchline to every single joke the other person will ever tell. The novelty is completely gone. So they sit down, evaluate, and amicably dissolve their union. Relationships aren't based on mutual survival anymore, but on fluid, shared curiosity.
And this brilliantly illustrates how living forever totally alters how we calculate risk. In a normal 75-year lifespan, riding a bicycle carries a relatively low cumulative risk. But if you live forever, doing minor risky things indefinitely mathematically guarantees a fatal accident. Your cumulative risk eventually hits 100%. No way around it. This undeniable math birthed an intense, almost pathological cult of safety. Society entirely traded its creative fire and physical freedom for slow, incredibly cautious stewardship. For instance, Julian, acting as an arbitrator, actually sentences a 42-year-old man to cognitive retraining merely for riding a manual bicycle, just to feel the wind. The justification? A citizen's death is a permanent loss of social capital. Each person represents centuries of investment that literally cannot be replaced due to those demographic caps. Therefore, innovation slows to an absolute crawl, and everyone just meticulously persists.
Part 4. The Great Egress, the Philosophy of the End.
Let's move to how this builds up mentally. Because even with perfect health and a totally padded society, there's still an ultimate biological limitation. The body was cured of decay, but the brain, it has a strict storage limit. From 0 to 100 years, your recall is sharp, but cross that 100-year mark, and the brain kicks off synaptic pruning, fading your early memories just to make room. By the time you hit 200+ years, you experience what they call the saturated mind, literally losing your childhood memories entirely. It's like a cup completely overflowing. The brain just runs out of space.
And this cognitive limit leads directly to anhedonic eternity. Take Marcus. He's a 310-year-old man in perfect physical health, but emotionally, he is totally exhausted. He has watched political empires rise and fall in the exact same cycles 4 times over. This slow numbing of emotion sets in. He realizes that when the world loses its ability to surprise you, curiosity just dies. And when curiosity dies, leaving nothing but cellular metabolism behind, well, the human spirit is already dead.
Which brings us to this profound thought from Marcus. He says if a book never ends, it's not a story. The ending is what gives the narrative its shape, its beauty. With a perfectly clear mind, Marcus actually chooses to take the egress draft, a peaceful, voluntary end to his life. And honestly, there's a melancholic beauty to this conclusion. Because by choosing to end his own story, he restores the balance. His exit finally frees up a birth permit for Siddharth and Clara's child.
It turns out, humanity conquered time, only to discover that time was never the enemy to begin with. It's the frame that holds the canvas. Without an end, all those colors just bleed into something beautiful but entirely formless. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this provocative thought. If you lived in this ageless world and you had the absolute choice, when would you write your final chapter?
Please like and subscribe.